Hello, and thank you for joining. You're watching Open Horn of Africa. This is weekly program Future Africa, and I'm Fanta Mbelete hosting the program. Today, I'm joined by the founder of Untold Stories of African Women, Priska Ogana from Nigeria. Very warm welcome
Hello.
to you, Priska.
Thank you very much, Marcel. It's a pleasure being with you again.
How have you been after doing an interview in the last couple of months?
Well, it's I've been fine, and then especially because of the ancestors of African women in technology and all of that. So it's been awful, and I also appreciate you for the privilege to tell the world about the ancestors of African women. And then a couple of people have actually reached out to me, and then we discuss on how we can promote and encourage women to venture into the tech industry in Africa. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Tell our audience a little bit about your publications, Untold Stories of Africa Women.
Thank you very much once again. The Untold Stories of Africa Women was vetted last year with the passion uh, to to encourage African women to tell their stories, their inspiring stories, how they started, especially those who have broken the glass ceiling, doing a lot more in their spaces. Uh, so far, we recorded more than 30 stories last year across the African continent, and it's inspiring, and a testimony from that journal has really been encouraging, because your younger women in Africa have been encouraged, motivated, inspired to push their dreams, and then I'm hopeful with the impact we're making so far. So this year we're looking at the untold stories of African women in technology, climate change, and environmental sustainability. We try to see how we can encourage African women to take up career in technology, lead the fight against, lead the fight in climate change and environmental sustainability. So we hope to inspire the next generation of African women in climate change, environmental sustainability, and above all technology, using this international journal publication. Is on the way. So we hope it will be out soon. Thank you.
Last time we discussed Untold Stories of African Women. Today we are going to talk about African issues in general, not only about women's, but about Africa in general, African continent. So now let me start my question with IGAD's mission. What are IGAD's mission and how is it implementing them on the ground?
Okay, thank you very much. IGA, which stands for Intergovernmental Authority on Development, is is an organization that promotes intergeneration, inter-religion, and uh, that promotes integration and among member states. It's also started with the responsibility to promote security, prosperity, and peace among member states. And so far, uh, it has been up to their game, although a lot has not been done much, but they have been up to their game. Yeah.
Do you think that integrating Africa is possible in near future, and what does it take or what does it need to make this integration reality?
Integrating Africa is very much possible, because Africa is for all of us. Africa is, like I always say, Africa is the genesis of the world. Yeah. So it takes a lot. It takes everyone to be on board, keen to the vision of integrating Africa, knowing that Africa is for all of us Africans, and we don't have any other continent outside Africa. So it's everyone's responsibility to key into doing what we ought to do at all levels, ranging from our leaders, the head of states, the African head of states, the president, prime ministers, and everyone ought to put hand into this if we must integrate, develop, and emancipate Africa to be the Africa we envision it to be.
Ethiopia has been playing a major role in Pan-Africanism creation and even for African liberation. How do you evaluate that?
Ethiopia has been I would say it has been that aspirational country in Africa. It has been at the center of Africa, looking at the role it played in helping other African countries to in the colonial era to stand on their own. If you look closely, you see that most of the even the AU African Union is situated in Ethiopia. That is to tell you the role Ethiopia has been playing in Africa and its development and integration. Ethiopia has also played a very vital role. Is playing a very vital role in the ongoing war in Sudan. We can see all that Ethiopia has been doing, especially in the intergovernmental authority on the on intergovernmental authority on development here. So Ethiopia has really been playing a very vital role. It's the basis of every African country is free today as getting freedom, and this is attributed to Ethiopia and its record. Ethiopia has also housed the African Union, and most of all decisions that is geared towards the development and emancipation of Africa. Most of them are being done in Ethiopia. Ethiopia has been the machinery behind Africa integration and Africa development.
As you have been saying, Ethiopia has been playing a major role in solving problems even in Sudan. But Sudan took some land from Ethiopian territory. Still, Ethiopia didn't address this issue in a military way or in a military force. Rather, it invited for round-table negotiation. How do you see Ethiopia's peace advocacy?
Ethiopia has been the ideal state for Pan Africanism. Unlike other African states, like on the ongoing dispute between the Congolese and the Rwanda that's lingered for long, and then we have also the Francophonian fight in Cameroon and other African countries. This singular act of Sudan is a call for war, but Ethiopia being leading the talk has always embraced peace, peaceful negotiation in Africa. So I applaud Ethiopia for that brave act of peaceful negotiation among in the fellow African countries. This is a sign of brotherhood. This is a sign of the Pan Africanism we all talk about. This is a sign of uh, we are brothers, and this is our land. This is Africa. This is us. We have many. We should embrace peace and solve this in a brotherhood other than war. So and Ethiopia is always that ideal country for peace. Ethiopia talk peace and they do peace. So I applaud Ethiopia, and I also urge other African countries to emulate this singular act from Ethiopia, because we all talk about peace, but the journey towards peace and freedom is what most people can't. Most people who proclaim peace can't journey on the path of peace. But Ethiopia preach peace and the journey towards peace. So this is what we should be doing in Africa. We should be we should embrace negotiation when disputes arises instead of war.
Ethiopian Airline is joining almost all Africans today. It is a Pan-African airline as it began serving all Africans, even starting from anti-colonial struggle in most parts of Africa. How do you see, or what do you say about Ethiopian Airline?
Yeah, last week or thereabout, I read in one of the Nigerian national newspaper about the ongoing collaboration between Ethiopian Airline and Nigerian Airline. I was so amazed about the progress so far and how this continent are coming together to foster available transportation for Africans. You see, so Ethiopia has really been so much into Pan Africanism that it drives joy to see other countries prosper, to foster development and sustainability in Africa. So I applaud Ethiopia for that move, and I also see that Ethiopia also thriving in other uh, transportation, affordable and efficient transportation in other African countries, the Kenya, the Rwanda, the other African countries. So, and if you talk about transportation, especially as it has to do with airline in Africa, you can't talk about it without Ethiopian Airline. And Ethiopian Airline so far has been efficient in that sector, and this is what this is what this is what Africa stands for. And I think that other African countries will continue to collaborate with Ethiopia. The aim is to have uh, a Pan-African transportation for Africans. To have a free visa to all African states. You are currently in Ethiopia. You can travel with visa free to all African states. Likewise, me here in Nigeria. And I see Ethiopia Airline with the work they have done so far, with the prospects they are pushing so far. I see Ethiopian Airline covering that space for all African in the African continent. And I also call on other head of states, presidents of other African countries to key into this move by Ethiopia uh, to generally bring developments with regards to transportation in Africa and other sectors as well. So by the year 2030, we should be halfway into the Pan Africanism, the Africa we want, Africa for Africa by Africans.
As Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed has been calling for permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. President of Kenya, William Ruto, and President of South Africa and other African leaders are still calling for representation in the United Nations Security Council. What do you say about Africans' representation or permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council?
I've read about African Security Council and then the calling of African leaders into that sector. But then I actually want to make this that it's high time we in Africa um, look beyond any form of sentiment and then project people who have Africa at heart into that sector. What I mean is this: I usually tell my people that Africa is their own problem. Any day we Africans in unity decide that we should put an end to any form of colonialism in any form in Africa, that will be the end of that. Okay, so if you look at the strong Pan Africans who have lost their life in the struggle of free Africa, in the struggle to emancipate Africa, the lives of Gaddafi, the lives of Kwame Nkrumah, and all of that, you agree with me that these people are being betrayed by their own brothers, by their fellow Africans, right? So and the West seems to use their brothers to to betray them, right? So that brings me to the question: if we must fully represent Africa in the United Nations Security Council, we should look beyond sentiment. in any form, and then project African and African leaders who have Africa at heart. The people who cannot betray us with a slice of bread, the Africans who have Africa at heart, who cannot sell their products and then facilitate or pilot war or insecurity or any form of betrayal in Africa. So I think that that should be the criteria. And then, if even if it's one person we can find um, that has these potentials and qualities, we should support that person to represent Africa instead of having 10 people or 54 people representing each African country in that sector, and all of them are bunch of betrayers. It is better we have someone, just one person, who can represent and speak for Africans and still not betray us. So this is my take on that in that regard.
As Ethiopia has been calling for representation in the United Nations Security Council permanent seat, it has also been calling for African giant media house that can counter the false narration of Western media. What do you say on this?
Okay, that this is one of the many factors that actually prompted me to establish and found the organization which I foresee, the Untold Stories of Africa, to allow Africa to tell their own story by themselves. Okay, so enough of what the Western media has been projecting about Africa. Okay, there's so much lies in that story, in what they have been projecting about Africa. It is time for Africa to stand up and tell their own story by themselves. Africa know themselves better than any other person. Okay, so it's high time we tell our story by ourselves, how we all started and all of that. So there's so much filtration. There's so much filtration in the Western media. So I will urge, like, and I keep saying that I love what OBN is doing in Africa, not just in Ethiopia, in Africa generally. And then if we have up to 5 to 6 media with the mind, aim, and objective of OBN as like that of OBN, Africa is on its way to media liberation from the Western media. I tell you this without any form of regret that uh, OBN, and if we have uh, 5 other media houses, or more like 5 to 7 other media houses like OBN in Africa, Africa is on its way to media liberation from the Western media because there's so much lies. There's a lot of people from other continents, and when we interact with them in that platform, I see that they have so much of stories from the Western media about Africa, which more than half of them are lies. They believe that Africa is, in fact, we Africans, we have the same sense like animals. We are people who can't reason themselves. We are, in fact, Africa is full of wild animals with senseless people and leaders, HIVs, poor, and all of this is their perception about Africa. They have never projected Africa with the resources the giant strides Africa and Africans are doing in the global map, which is very, very disturbing. So we should stand up for ourselves and then tell our stories using our media platform without filtration. Thank you very much.
Africa has been failing to benefit from investment. Then, how should this continent be economically self-independent?
Africa's economically independence lies within Africa. Africa and Africans hold the key to their economic independence. When we stop downgrading our own efforts, our own products, our African products, and when we start encouraging, supporting Africans who are making little efforts in the manufacturing sector, in production sector, entertainment, in medical sector, and all of that. when we start patronizing our own product, our Africa made in African products and services, that is the time we uh, that is the way to African economic independence. What I'm saying is this: Africa is the second largest continent in the world. Africa has Africa is a global market for all products in the world. Imagine we Africans start patronizing, supporting, and encouraging ourselves in all different sectors. If you go to in the Nigerian market today, many people prefer to buy Chinese shoes, footwear made in Chinese in UK than shoes made in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Ethiopia. You could imagine that when we start and if you see that shoes made in Africa or in Nigeria or yeah, is even more stronger or and better compared to those ones manufactured outside Africa because these are resources in, in Africa used to develop products and services that are suitable for us in the African soil. The weather condition in Africa is in line and suitable for that. So the day all of us wake up to this reality of supporting ourselves, encouraging one another. Imagine, imagine the local league here, the local football league we play in Africa. Everybody, most supporters of English Premier League are Africans. These people make huge amounts of money from African fans supporting English Premier League. Imagine we throw that kind of support to our local football league here in Africa, even in our country home. Imagine how global it will be. Africa is a global market for every investors in the world, even in the social media sector, in the technology sector. Africa is a global market, and that is why many of them are shopping in and out of Africa. So the day we wake up to this reality, the day we will be on our way to economic independence in Africa.
Why did African leaders fail to address these local bureaucracies and conflicts that are said to be barriers to investments in Africa?
African leaders are saboteurs. I'm not afraid to say this. African leaders, an African leader can sell his own brother for a peanut. Yes. So there is something that happened in Kenya the other time. I had a friend who is from Kenya, and this guy produces corn, like yeah, corn in quantity, in large quantity. They have large farm. So we were talking about because I also I have interest in agriculture because I see that is in years to come it will be the way forward, right? So because regardless of anything, man must eat, right? Man must eat. So we can only eat through agriculture. And when we eat sustainable food with less chemical preservative in them. We eat fresh food from our fresh African soil. So this friend of mine from Kenya was telling me how the Kenyan government has negotiated and signed deal with the Europeans in fact, and there are a lot of local corn producers, maize producers in the country. But he neglect these people and leave them leave their farm products and then import huge with millions of dollars import from UK to satisfy the people in Kenya. And Kenya has enough capacity, enough farmers to grow the maize that, that are enough for Kenya. How do you justify such acts by an African leader who was elected to lead his people, to prosper his people, to bring development and the infrastructure to his people? So I will say that this again and again that most of the African leaders are saboteurs, they are betrayers, they can't sell their brothers for and that's one of the major challenges we face that is drawing us back to that is restricting the rapid development in Africa is the African leaders. And any African leaders with this Pan-Africanism spirit, you see them, you see these leaders being not living long. You see what happened to Gaddafi? Because after Gaddafi's death, we discovered that uh, Gaddafi was actually murdered by, by the West through his fellow ally. And when it comes to African issues, I talk with a lot of pain because I have a lot of pain about Africa in such a way that I'm really passionate about Africa. I'm so passionate about Africa, and I'm so passionate about African growth, and I'm so passionate about African development. So when it comes to African issues, you see me talking with a lot of pain because Africa is not where it used to be, and there's so much we need to be done. There's so much need to be done, and people who are in the forefront to lead this fight are betraying us. So it's a lot of pain. So I'm so sorry if I'm sounding if I'm bringing much of emotion into this. I'm so sorry.